right, all right, all right. Let the countdown begin. We have a few more seconds left. Hope you're all settling in, and we'll begin shortly. Perfect. Well, it is noon officially, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here today. I am excited to be back for yet another live event where I unpack different aspects of multifamily underwriting, one deal, one live at a time, to help you become empowered and better educated investors. And today's topic is one that is quite relevant in any market, but especially in today's market. And what we'll do today is dive into the first step that anyone should take when they underwrite a deal before they even look into the numbers, and namely looking at the market and performing the market analysis. But before we start, for those who don't know me or for those who are logging in for the first time, my name is Vessi Kapulian. I'm a former commercial lender turned real estate investor. I am active in the multifamily space today, providing advisory and consulting services to investors, family offices, growing our collective apartment portfolios together. And I also help investors new to multifamily learn how to effectively and efficiently analyze a deal from beginning to end, even if they have never done this before, in order to minimize the risk of loss. We work hard for our money, so you don't want to lose those. And in many cases, those losses could be hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars. So excited to have you today. If you are excited to learn about market analysis, why it's important, type market in the chat. And when you guys interact in the chat, that also helps me connect with you better, as well as to the extent there are follow-up questions, we can connect offline after the chat. So comment market in the chat if you are excited to learn about market analysis today. And I cannot tell you how many times people bring deals to me, whether it's for a second set of eyes or need help underwriting, and they spend hours and hours dissecting the numbers. And the first thing I usually look at is the market and submarket. And more often than not, I often find the property being located, say, in a war zone, or maybe in an area where you may have difficulty attracting top property management talent or top residents, top tenants. And when I point that out to them, oftentimes they're surprised. And so I'm hoping that today's live will also help you save time from that perspective, so you can quickly decide, is this an area that I'm comfortable in operating in, hiring in, promoting and providing residence in? And that will save you a ton of time and hours analyzing and crunching numbers. What we'll do today is I will take you through the steps, or at least some of the steps that I actually follow when I perform my market analysis. We'll be using tools and resources that are absolutely free. Of course, as you grow, there are paid subscriptions and very sophisticated, deep databases like CoStar, Yardi, RealPage, Bright Investor, things that you can subscribe to, and that definitely makes sense as your business grows, as your deal flow grows. But when you're just starting, especially starting a new business, or maybe you're a passive investor looking to vet a deal, those resources are that I'll share with you are very reliable. They've worked well for me in the past, and at a minimum, they'll get you to start asking questions about the deal and the risk. I recently posted in one of my newsletters an article on the importance of market analysis. And so if you'd like to subscribe to my newsletter, you can simply follow me on LinkedIn and subscribe there, which will also notify you of future live events and additional insights on underwriting. But the market is extremely important because that market data really forms the assumptions or the inputs that we're going to be utilizing in our financial models to project the cash flow and the valuation of the investment. And when we think about a market, there are really two categories. One is the market or the macro level, and the other one is the sub-market or the micro level. So when we look at the market level, there are a few key metrics that we want to pay attention to. One is population growth, right? At the end of the day, we're in the business of providing residence to people, and people are residents, tenants are our customers. So we'd like to go into areas where there is continuous population growth because that ensures a constant flow of customers. We also want to see job growth, right? We want paying customers, one who can afford to pay the rent for the services that we render. You want to see job diversity, so no single industry or no single employer exposure, because if that industry goes through a severe downturn, collapses, or that employer exits town, right, then you can be looking at a pretty distressed situation. Median household income and median household income growth, which help determine the level of affordability. We want to be well versed into the values of the home and what is the differential between owning a home versus renting a home, the local supply and demand dynamics, the absorption rates, the cap rates. I actually did a live event on cap rates about a week ago, so you can catch the recording on my profile, and I did a deeper dive there on how to determine and find cap rates and so forth. Price to income ratio, medium rent to medium income ratio, rent to own ratio. These are all different metrics that we look at to analyze the market at the macro level. And I'll go through a couple of those today. To go through the full list, which I actually cover in my community and the course that comes with it, it will take at least an hour. But if you are interested into going into more detail, as well as getting some of the templates and checklists that I provide in conjunction with performing the market analysis, simply message me directly on any social media. I'm primarily active on LinkedIn, YouTube, as of late also on Facebook and Instagram. Or you can simply go to masteringmultifamilyunderwriting.com to find out more. So that's at the macro level, and I'll show you about maybe 2 to 3 examples given the limited time we have today. And then we also want to look at the micro level or the neighborhood level. A lot of these same characteristics or metrics will apply at the micro level as well, such as median household income, the poverty rate, the crime rate. These are just a couple of the KPIs that, or key performance indicators, that you want to pay attention to. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And while I bring up my screen, type yes in the chat if you're excited to dive in and learn tools and steps that you can implement today in your underwriting process. So type yes in the chat. So I'll bring up my screen in just a moment. Okay. Present. Share screen. Should be coming up in just a moment. All right. So that particular, I have the address of the property, but this is actually from a live deal. And if you, ever want me to take a look at maybe a property or anything that you're working on, I'm happy to do that live as well. We can do a very similar exercise in a subsequent live. But I mentioned one of the characteristics is population growth. And so if you're ever in doubt, there are really two core resources that you can go to. One is the census.gov, and the other one is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Those are the data sources that feed a lot of the sites that I'm about to share with you. But I still like using these sites because they present the information in a more easily digestible manner, and a lot of them, as I'll show you in a moment, have additional features like heat maps, tile maps, to where you that make it visually at least easier to digest the data and help with the analysis. So in this case, that property is located in Bradenton, Florida. So I'll just start by doing a simple Google search: population growth in Bradenton, Florida. And it's going to bring up a number of resources. Off the top, you can see this is specific to the city. You can see the population growth and trends, which is pretty healthy. But let me scroll down. So there are a number of sites. Data USA is one of them. This is the census. And the one I'm looking for here is macro trends. So this will give you the metro area. A lot of times the data that you'll see is at the Metropolitan Statistical or MSA area, unless you're in a place like LA, but even for LA, it will give you the MSA. So you can see pretty healthy population growth. And just as a reference, the US population growth year over year was 0.5%. So this far exceeds the population growth in average for the US. And what I typically like to see is at least growth that exceeds the US average. Ideally, it would be 1% or over 1%. So this particular city is growing at a pretty healthy clip, as you can see, steady eddy, and projected to do so. Of course, as the population base grows, you can see that the growth rate or the percent change year over year decline. So that is not unusual because you're working off of a larger base. But still, it far exceeds the U.S. average. So that's a positive. Then the next one is job growth and employment. So we'll type in Bradenton job growth, and one I like to look at is the Department of Numbers. But before we go there, I want to show you the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, which is one of the data sources, and they each show you different level of detail. So you can see here the labor force data. Unemployment rate is gradually creeping up, which is in line with what we're seeing at the US national level, and it's at 4.1% as of February. But for comparison purposes, the US national average last time I looked, it was 4.3 or 4.4. So still doing better than where the US national average is. And you can take a look at the different categories of employment. You can see professional services, education, healthcare, leisure, and hospitality make up the greatest share of employment. But other things, this one will show you the actual number of jobs. Again, this is as of November 2023, and all of these sites typically refresh as soon as the original data source, BLS or census, refreshes. So you can see the growth month over month, year over year, which remains pretty steady, and how it has fluctuated over time. Another one that I like to use is the Data USA IO. So type in Bradenton Data USA IO, which shows you a lot of the same characteristics or KPIs. And I recommend, by the way, go to a few sites. The numbers will never be exactly the same or exactly identical, but you do want to check a couple of different sources and see the trends there. So here it gives you a really nice snippet in terms of population growth, poverty rate, median household income, median property value, a lot of the employment population, employment growth, which is really healthy, 284 year over year. But we'll go into the economy section. And if you recall, in the beginning, I mentioned one of the factors is job diversity. So here you can take a look at the various industries that comprise the Bradenton market. And it gives you a really nice visual. And what you don't want to see is heavy concentration in a single industry or two. Based on the various percents here that you see on the screen, no single industry exceeds 20%. Probably the highest is healthcare and social assistance at 15.8, and then retail trade at 13.9, which nicely aligns with the Bureau of Labor and Statistics data that we saw a moment ago. And that's kind of logical, right? There's a pretty healthy concentration of senior citizens and retiree population in that market. So naturally, the healthcare services will have a higher share, and then ancillary services like retail and so forth that support those that population, as well as those that service their need. But again, it's pretty well diversified. So you want to see that when you're looking at a market. And I want to show you one more site, Bradenton. It's called City Data, and that's again a one-stop shop where you can get a lot of the KPIs that I briefly listed at the beginning of the call. Again, that refreshes as soon as the census and the BLS refresh, but you can see the median household income as of today, and it's almost doubled since 2000, so grown at a pretty significant pace. You have the median home value, which has almost quadrupled. So a pretty strong appreciation is happening in that market. When you scroll down further, one item I wanted to point your attention to is the crime map. And ideally, what you want to see is an index below 500, ideally below 400 years. It's continuing to trend down. This is the COVID year, so that's more of an outlier, but it's well under even 300. So, and I like this particular index because city data tends to weigh more heavily towards the violent crimes, and these are the ones you want to avoid. Bestplaces.net is another site that will show you the crime index or crime activity. Theirs is more spread out. Again, always best to check several resources, but this is one that will give you a level. And if you wanted to get a feel, right, of the area, so the different shades here that you see currently, they're set at the median household income dollar value. They're different parameters that you can go to, and again, I go into that in a little bit more detail in my community and in my course. So if you'd like to dive into the detail and get some of the templates I use, simply send me a DM and we can connect one-on-one. But the darker shaded areas are higher income, so you can see the higher income areas, and probably the class A is how I would categorize them, are closer to the beach or coastal area. And then once you start going inland, the areas become lower with lower median household income. So factors like affordability and such will be relevant there. And why do I mention that, right? So let's just go to another site, Census Reporter, I think .com, Bradenton. I want to show you guys different sites again. So this is one where you can also get the median household income. So I'll type in the address. And usually on this one, I like to choose the census tract because I like to stay consistent with the census, but you can slice and dice the data, as you can see, by district, by zip code, however you want to dissect the information. So here it will show you the median household income. It's about 48,500. Poverty rate is about 17. Ideally, I would like it to be under 15, but no more than 20. So this is kind of on the edge. And for median household income, ideally, I'd like it to be over 50,000. So this is, and no less than 40,000. So this one is already kind of on the edge. But why is that important? Because when it comes to affordability, very often most property managers would require that in order for you to rent an apartment, you need to be making 3 times the amount of rent. And if we were to take this 48,500 median household income divided by times 30% divided by 12 equals about $1,200. And in reality, people have other fixed expenses like insurance, utilities, some food on the table. So if you want to be more realistic, I would say even use a 25% versus 30% ratio times the median household income divided by 12. That's a little over $1,000. So anywhere from $1,000 to $1,200 is what people can afford for rent. And why is that important? Because if someone comes to you and says, hey, I think if you add quarters for it and raise rents by $300, well, maybe that's possible if you're lucky enough to find those tenants. But if the general population is not making enough money to be able to afford this $1,500 rent, right? If they're capped at 1,100, 1,200, then you're going to find yourself in a pretty bad situation, right? Where you bought this property with the expectation of being able to raise rent to that level, and then find yourself in a situation where you're not able to accomplish that. And as we know, rent is one of the, along with cap rates, is one of the biggest drivers of the pro forma valuation. So just that alone destroyed your entire business plan. So going at the neighborhood level, so we look at the micro level. So looking at crime rates, spot crime is one that I like to use, and it gives you real-time crime data for an area. So we'll type in the address, and it will show you the crime activity in that particular area. So we can see here it's relatively quiet. Now there are few arrests, which what I typically look for is no violent crime. So shootings, arsons, things like that. Now assaults we see here and there. And if you click on each icon, it will tell you the where it occurred, what date, what time. Here is an arrest. They seem to have lots of arrests. So no violent crime. So automatically that is not necessarily a red flag. And if you're doing this remotely, maps.google.com, and you can do a virtual drive-through and save yourself some time, right? You don't want to be flying, especially if you're investing out of state. You don't want to be flying around the country for every property that you see. So this quick online search will give you an idea, do I even want to buy in that area or in that market? So usually I'd like to see kind of what's around. I do zoom in, zoom out, to see what's around of the property. Google nicely drops a pin to where the property is. So I see a lot of like local mom and pop. I see shops like Graverly, Cafe Habana, the Bedding Center, Harbor Freight, CarMax, just some local mom and pop stores, Hawaiian Village. So I think that gives me a signal. It's probably, we're probably looking at a class C, maybe C minus area. And what you can do is if you click on the picture here, it will allow you to do a virtual drive-through and see what's around of the property. Do pay attention to when these images are taken. Here at the bottom, Google will show you this was done in November 2022. So it's about 3 years old, or just under 3 years old, but not that outdated. So this is the subject property. You can see kind of The grounds are not very well maintained. We're looking at all around the neighborhood, like a junkyard, so not great. The neighbors across the street, they have stuff everywhere, so not super well maintained. Again, older cars, older homes. Will drive down the street a little bit, so lots of trash, and maybe they took this picture on trash day. I don't know, but doesn't seem like a well maintained neighborhood and area. So this is our property. So I see a couple of boarded, actually, boarded windows, so vacant, so not great to begin with. So we'll go around the corner and see what's there. So this is our property again to the right. Again, older cars, not very well maintained grounds, trash on the street. So I would call this class C minus. Again, I see another boarded house right here. You can see this thing is kind of falling apart. So not great. And then another site I'll show you is justicemaps.org. And that one is one of the heat maps that I mentioned at the beginning. It doesn't want to load. It says not secure. Let's try again. And if not, if it doesn't pop up, I will have to do it on another live. Let me try another browser. But it's a really, really cool site. It has a heat map on income. So you can see, you can immediately spot the good parts of town versus the bad parts of town. Admittedly, again, income and crime follow each other. So higher income areas are typically nicer areas, and lower tend to have higher propensity of crime. Let me see. Justice map. Go to income and I'll paste the address here. Oh no. Let me get the address from here. Okay, go. Yeah, the site seems to be out today. I'm not sure what's going on. Lately, it's been acting up, actually. It also had zoom in, zoom out buttons. It seems like those are completely gone. But you can get the point here. So the darker red are lower income areas. And when you see beige, these are like your class B. And then blue, light blue, dark blue are your class A areas. And the nice thing is you can see here 2020 and 2010, so you can see how it's evolved over the last 10 years. So you can see if the area is improving or stable or declining, depending on how the heat map evolves over that last 10-year period. So I know I shared with you today, and I can actually talk more and more for hours, but I want to see what questions do you have for me, and type these in the chat. There is usually a bit of a lag between the streaming, different streaming, the StreamYard software and the different platforms that I've gone live on, like the Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we'll give it a moment. So while the questions are coming up, I'll share a couple that I find are very frequently asked. So when looking at the area, what is the how closely, what's the mile radius do you look at? I would say ideally within 1 mile, and that's easier to do in larger metropolitan areas where the property and the population are more densely located. Once you start going into tertiary markets or rural areas where things are a little bit more spread out, you may have to go out further, like 3, maybe even 5 miles, as you're looking at the median household income, the crime rate, the rent comps, and all of that information. Um, why another factor is why is the data as of 2023 is another question I see. Well, ideally, yes, we all want data as of 2025 or as of the latest period. But unfortunately, all of these sites update as soon as the data source, which again, census and BLS update, and not they don't all update annually, meaning not all metrics update annually. Some are monthly, right? Like the unemployment rate, but others like the population get updated every couple of years. So as soon as the original data source updates, these other platforms will pull the data from there, and some do it more quickly, some do it less quickly or less timely, but still it's a good indicator. In most cases, just going through those exercises that I just showed you a minute ago has saved me from spending hours underwriting and avoiding, as well as avoiding really bad areas, and protecting me and my investors. And I see a question, where can I get the templates that you mentioned? You can simply DM me, and we can connect one-on-one. I can share with you about the course and the community where I go into that in a lot more detail. And I think we're out of time, so I appreciate you being here today. If you'd like to learn more, connect with me via DM or go to Mastering Multifamily Underwriting. Also, follow me on LinkedIn and YouTube, because I'll continue to do those educational live events to help you become an empowered and educated investor. Till next time, ciao.